Hey, this is Luke with Hanson's Coaching Services, and I just wanted to do a discussion on recovering. This is great for not only marathon training, but for really any training, any training that you're going into, getting after it a little bit. So I want to talk about really just the tricks, theories, things like that. What's kind of the buzzwords and what's actually feasible, what's practical, and what might be a little bit of just uh, hoopla. So we'll go over quite a bit here and I'll jump right into it. Okay, so we talk a lot about cumulative fatigue, more so definitely with the marathon than other distances. For some people, even the half marathon is more like marathon training anyway, so you will see a little bit of it in there too. But really, cumulative fatigue is just really learning how to run tired. So what I think people get mixed up with is uh, not understanding the difference between being tired in a good way versus being tired from an overtraining standpoint, and that's something that we have to get pretty clear with people, because if it is definitely one thing we see it on both sides really. You see people who tend to want to take too much time off because something was sore during a run, and not knowing the difference between being sore versus being on the verge of being injured. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. And then you'll see it on the other side too, where people will just continually push through when somebody looking from the outside clearly sees that they need to really kind of back some things off. And a lot of times we are our own worst enemies, and I say this from experience too. So we need to know kind of when's the right time to push through, when's the right time to back off. And really what we want to talk about more in depth here is the strategies we should be doing as part of our training anyway, especially in terms of nutrition and the simple things, like the things that aren't going to take necessarily any extra time, and things that we should be doing really for a general healthy lifestyle anyway. And because I just see people who want to spend all this money on these other things, but yet they don't do the basics very well. And so it doesn't really matter if you do these other things, because they're not gonna take care of the core component of eating generally healthy and timing nutrition generally well, and getting things like good night's sleep and all that good stuff that we all know about, but it's almost like it's cliche, and so it doesn't really apply to us. Is how I feel like people look at it sometimes. So we're going to jump right into a lot of those methods and where you're going to get the most bang for your buck on that. All right, so here is from I show this a lot, but this is from mysportscience.com. This is a great continuum of showing you like where you probably are on the scale of things, and kind of knowing what the differences are for some of this stuff. So you see there on the far left, you have the main first block there. It's just fatigue, or general fatigue, and that's where recovery is rapid. So let's say you go out for a run, you're fatigued from that run, and depending on how hard that run was, will depend on how fast you recover from that. So as you see there, it says recovery is rapid, usually within 24 to 48 hours. Then you get into something where it's called, you have two parts there. You have overreaching. You have functional overreaching and non-functional overreaching. And so as you can see there, recovery takes a little bit longer, up to 2 weeks, but it's part of a planned program. That's key there. It's part of a planned program. So you can think of that as immediately, you can think of that as that's where we want to be with cumulative fatigue. We want to be in that functional overreaching state where we're still able to do stuff. We feel tired, but we are in the middle of the hardest part of our training. And once we get to that taper, it's going to help take care of that. And that's really, that yellow and orange is really where we want to spend all of our time in the training plan. And what happens is people will tend to get beyond that, and they'll start getting into the non-functional overreaching, and this is where things can take longer. And so with the functional overtraining, once you take that recovery, which we do with a taper, your performance is going to be improved. With a non-functional, the negatives outweigh the positives. So even if you take a couple of weeks off, or reduce training for 2 weeks for taper, your performance is still not going to be any better, right? And so that's where we kind of look at, when we'll see in the next slide or two, is really differentiating between those two. It really comes down to performance. If performance is continually suffering, then you're probably crossed into that non-functional type of area. And then you get way over to overtraining syndrome, which is thrown around quite a bit, but you'd have to really dig yourself a hole to get into overtraining. I think most people are really into a severe non-functional overtraining. They're not quite into that overtraining syndrome. But the non-functional, that's where people start getting the injury. Because a lot of times you either get injured or you burn out before you actually get out of the way to an overtraining syndrome. You'd have to be really you'd really almost have to be like, addicted to exercise to just kind of go through everything, which definitely happens for sure. But it's a pretty rare case where people go that far into it and they're actually overtraining. But this will take months to recover from, and you might see a person just kind of vanish off the face of the earth for a really long time with this type of thing. But for most people who are with us, the farthest I see people really get is the non-functional overreaching, because a lot of times life itself takes care of you from getting too far into it. But the key here I want you to take away is that fatigue and functional overreaching are where we want to be. Fatigue is normal, and functional overreaching is where the performance gains are really made. But we've got to be careful not to go beyond that. And so I think what you see there too. So fatigue should be something that's more short term. The functional overreaching is going to be something that's a little bit longer term. And that's, if you've read my blog post on not doing too much too fast, that's exactly why. Because what will happen is you're going to be fatigued no matter what, just by doing the training, but you'll be into the functional overreaching sooner than I want you to. So if you're hammering every run, or you're jumping mileage way up faster than I've asked for, or you're doing more workouts than I've asked for, that's why I really kind of intentionally pull the reins back for the first month or so. We'll start the ball rolling, getting the fitness going, but I intentionally pull you back a little bit to kind of give ourselves a buffer from going beyond the functional overreaching into the non-functional, even if you do run a little bit fast on some stuff. But I can control the mileage, and I can control the number of workouts that we're doing, which is going to be enough for most people. And so that's where we're at with that. The next thing we'll look at is some of the signs and symptoms, I think. But the causes of overtraining or non-functional overreaching. So this I see a ton of times too, is people will say they'll not hit a workout and they'll automatically wonder what went wrong, or they'll have a few workouts in a row that are wrong, and they'll go straight to the training, and they'll kind of discount all these other things. Like, it's not just training, but it's also, maybe there's family stress. Maybe if you're on a team, there's teammate stress, or you're in a group running situation, and some hot shot in your Thursday night group run, is talking trash or whatever, and it's got you stressed out, whatever the case is. Or we're starting to get closer to the competition. You start doing the freak out, and I'm not fit enough, so you start doing more and more and more. And then financial stress, all these different things are all sources of stress, right? And they all add together, and they're all going to have an implication on how well you perform in the running. So you have to balance really all of your stress in life with recovery, and that means recovery time. So that can be as simple as the recovery time between each repeat that you're doing, all the way up to how many days before have I recovered from the next workout. So you talk about the modifications of programs and things like that. That's why if you go back to the fatigue part where it says 24 to 48 hours, you can automatically see where a lot of people get into problems are if they've run that speed or strength, and maybe they've run it a little bit too fast, then they have Wednesday off, and then they turn around and come back and run the Thursday tempo run. For some people, that's simply just not enough time. And so I'll say, why don't you switch that Thursday and Friday? Or, that's usually where I spread things out for people with that. But so recovery time, sleep is a huge one. If people will be thinking about, maybe they're stressed out with work and they're only getting 4 to 6 hours. I've seen people who just don't even, sleep is an afterthought. Like, if they get a couple hours, they think that they're okay. And let alone life in general, but especially for performance and putting your body through all this stress of training and stuff. Sleep is the number one thing that you can try to control. And even if we don't make it a lot of sleep, we have to focus on making what sleep we get the absolute best quality that we can get. And we'll talk about that later too. Diet, obviously nobody's diet is perfect, and I'm not going to push on, you have to do this and you have to do that. But in general, you have to make sure that you're doing some things right. Like even if it's just simply making sure you're getting enough water in, supplementing with a vitamin, something like that, and just trying to do little things that are going to improve your diet. I know a lot of you travel for work and stuff, and it makes things a little bit difficult, but you got to control what you can with the diet. And a lot of times it's even just as simple as the timing of the nutrition, is making sure you're getting in protein and carbs after your workouts. Make sure you're trying to eat 3 meals a day, something like that. It can be something as simple like that, not loading up on 1 meal a day and then having that excess calories that you can't really absorb going right into fat stores or whatever the case is. It all adds up to those things. Other recovery techniques we'll talk about: sports psychologist, relationship counseling, all the other things. We won't get too much into those things. We'll control the training aspect of things. All right, so symptoms. You can read through about fatigue, obviously fatigue, chronic muscle soreness, early onset of fatigue. These are probably the biggest ones people will see right away. Increased resting heart rate, changes in heart rate variability, which is becoming more popular. And I like that one. Long-term changes in heart rate variability are something that you can monitor over the course of days and weeks. I think will give you a much better indication than just necessarily increased resting heart rate. But although they can indicate whether sickness is coming on or something like that. Immune function, a lot of colds, things like that. Mood, a lot of times people get in a pretty grumpy mood, irritable, things like that. Blood work, a lot of these things are going to happen with endurance training anyway. So that might be a little bit tougher. Sleep, disturbed sleep is a common one, especially with training hard. It actually makes it a little harder to sleep sometimes. And then gastrointestinal, which would be excessive weight loss, loss of appetite, absence of menstruation, constipation or diarrhea. I don't see those things as quite as often, but so chances are you are experiencing some of these things, right, with training hard. A lot of it's going to come from the fatigue, some of it's going to come from the physiology, some of it's going to come from the mood. Those chances are you're going to have a combination of some of those symptoms. So the question is, am I really overtraining? And as you can see there with the performance is the number one thing. Without a drop in performance, there's no overreaching or overtraining. And that's key, right? So if you are tired and maybe you don't feel very good for the first few miles, but then after the first few miles, the run's fine, paces are fine, you're not losing time on workouts, all other factors, equalized. So that's the biggest thing. If your performance isn't decreasing, it's okay to feel some fatigue. It's okay to be a little bit grumpy. But as soon as all those things are there and performance is decreasing, that's when you got to start worrying about it. Maybe we spread things out a little bit. Maybe we scale back mileage. Maybe we scale back a goal. We got to take steps right away once you notice all of those things happening at once. We've got to take the steps right away to either spread days out, reduce the volume of those workouts, reduce the paces of those workouts, something. We have to start manipulating some of those training variables so that we can pull those reins back and get you back into the functional overreaching and avoid going into the non-functional. Because once you're really into the non-functional, it's really going to make it hard to perform well or even get to the starting line on race day. So that's key there. So keep note of what you're feeling, and then the main thing is that's the deal breaker. If the performance decreases, and not just one workout, but if you've gone like a week, 2 weeks, and all of this, and just things are just steadily getting worse, that's we got to stop. We got to figure it out, pull the reins back, and then we can still salvage the race for sure. But if we just keep trying to push through, that's when people and a lot of times don't even make it to the starting line. Okay, so First thing I want to look at is recovery time. And as we recall back to a few slides ago, 24 to 48 hours really to recover from one hard effort. So an easy run, yeah, you're looking at probably less than 24 hours, but this is really in terms of SOS workouts. 24 to 48 hours. And that doesn't have to be complete recovery. And that's where I think people get sometimes hung up, is that they see, oh, that means not doing anything to those people. And it doesn't have to mean that. And that's where the easy days come in. And that's where I really stress on running the easy days a lot easier, right? So if you go out and get some running in, but it's 2 minutes slower than your marathon pace, you're still going to recover and build your fitness at the same time. And that's the beauty of the easy run when it's done right. But a lot of times people want to push that easy run faster and faster and faster, and it just doesn't serve them well long term, especially because fatigue is, and also the other thing we talk about balancing in this, is fatigue puts in the process of basically putting our body under stress. And then it's how well you recover from that stress that really promotes the adaptation. So that's where we have to balance. So do we recover too much so that the amount of fatigue is blunted, or that's the question. But we don't want to go without doing anything and being automatically going into non-functional overreaching, right, or not overtraining. We don't want to go too far, so we have to have some amount of recovery to allow for it. But the fatigue is necessary for long-term adaptation. So all those things working together. It's not a black or white thing. It's definitely a gray issue where you got something from the fatigue and something from the recovery, and it's a balance of those things that are ultimately going to improve your general performance, your ability over time, all of those things. As we talked about, where the biggest problems I see is sometimes Sunday to Tuesday, because you have Sunday the long run, Monday easy, and then Tuesday either a speed or a strength, and then Tuesday to Wednesday. So that's where people will tend to get in trouble, especially if they do push too hard. If you push too hard in general, those problems are going to arise. So that's where, when I talk about the paces, why I'm so animate on that, because it's not about just that day. It's about what it leads to the next day, and what that leads to the next day, and what that leads to the next day. And so you can push the paces for a few weeks to a month, maybe 6 weeks, but then 9 times out of 10, I see people who are like, all of a sudden it just hits them, and it's like, whoa, this is so hard. I don't know what I can do. I don't even know if I'm going to make it to the race now. All these things. So when it's easy, let it be easy. It's okay if it's easy early on. That's not where your big fitness gains are. Your big fitness gains are going to be during the 8-mile tempos, 9-mile tempos, 10-mile tempos, the 16-mile long runs, the speed and the strength themselves. Let those things, let the fitness come to you. Don't force the fitness onto the early part of the schedule. And I've talked about that plenty of times. So, but there is a time to spread things out. And I've learned this myself, especially like in our elite program. When I first came to Hanson's in 2004, we were basically the same structure as you guys. We were Tuesday, we were some sort of speed or strength. We were running out every day, but then Wednesday was easy, and then Thursday was something at Stony Creek Metro Park. It was something like it might not have been like a true tempo run, but it was a long marathon pace workout. So something like maybe 5 times 2 miles, or 3 times 3 miles, or 4 times 3 miles, something in the 10 to 15 mile range at marathon pace. It was a big workout. Friday, Saturday would be easy, and then Sunday would always be a long run or longer run at wherever the Stony Creek Running Club was meeting. And now it's pretty much at the Lake Orion running shop every Sunday, but unless we have another workout now. But so now, after over 14 years, it's evolved, and now we're on a 9-day cycle, right? So we go easy, some sort of SOS, easy, some sort of SOS, easy, usually a longer run or something like that. So probably average a long run probably average 2 long runs a month. It works out to 2 to 3 a month. And some people will say that's not enough, and I say the same thing for you guys, is that your easy runs are long enough were that you're getting a lot of the same aerobic stress that you would get from a long run. So a lot of you, or if you're running a 10-mile easy run, even an 8-mile easy run, you're getting over an hour of running a day in one run. You're knocking on the door of crossing that 90-minute point where I would consider it a true long run. So you're getting a lot of the same stuff, and you're learning to deal with the fatigue the same way. So there is a time to adjust, and it actually kind of allows, to me, it allows actually more mileage. We're just backing off the frequency of the SOS, and that's usually where people get hung up. So 9-day cycle, we've talked about that before. I'll also do something where I'll go Tuesday SOS, Wednesday offer easy, Thursday a medium long run. So it might be 8 to 12 miles considering the person. Friday, Saturday easy, or no, I'm sorry. Friday easy, Saturday easy, Sunday another SOS. So they basically had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They've had 4 days between SOS days, but they have had that medium long run. You kind of balance it out with like what I like to call a bridge day, where it's something that's going to be a little bit of an extended effort above an easy run, but it's not necessarily a true SOS run. And then you bounce back and you kind of keep that cycle. Or what I'll do, and if you notice with the classic plans, is it's basically long run, and then the next week's a shorter run, long run, shorter long run. And that's where I think people got to take it easy at, because that's really a built-in recovery mechanism for you, where you can do that tempo on Thursday. So say we'll start it off. So you did a true long run on that Sunday. You had Monday easy, Tuesday speed, Wednesday off, Thursday tempo, Friday, Saturday easy, and then Sunday, where it would never necessarily be where you usually have a long run, or what I would call an SOS day, it's now an easy day again. And so that makes it a nice break from that Thursday to the next Tuesday between really hard efforts. And that's where people, if you're really fatigued, then take advantage of that 4-day stretch and just run it easy. Make sure you're just not pushing the pace, things like that. And that'll set you up so that you can make it through those hard weeks a little bit more in one piece. All right, so hopefully that made sense. I know there's a lot going on there, but bottom line is there are ways to spread things out to give yourself easier or more recovery time between workouts. And the only other thing I would add to that is making sure that, like, if you know you have a horrible time recovering from tempo runs, make sure that you have more time to recover from that to your next thing than let's say if you know you recover from the speed pretty well, you don't need a ton of recovery time from that to your next workout. Where you need the recovery time is from what really bothers you the most to the next workout. That's where you got to put the most time, and then you can kind of close things in a little bit on the things that you recover better from. Hopefully that makes sense. But things you handle well, it takes less time to recover from. Things that you don't handle well doesn't mean don't do them. It means do them, but maybe give yourself a little bit more time to recover before the next hard effort. All right, that was a lot. All right, so sleep, relaxation. We talked about this a little bit before, but just some actual definitions. Greater than 30 hours required to have an impact on anaerobic performance. So that'd be like half marathon paces and faster for most people. So you basically have to go over a day without sleep. 24 hours to decrease aerobic performance, where you see a hit on that. And then sustained repeated bouts of exercise. So workouts sometimes you could actually do all right with, you don't really notice it, but after 2 nights of sleep deprivation, submaximal efforts will be affected. You'll notice it, you'll feel it, you'll feel the dragging feeling. So that's kind of where the old adage is: the night before might not necessarily matter, but it's really 2 days before the race that are really going to matter for the sleep deprivation. So that comes into play on race day too, where a lot of times you don't sleep very well before race day. That's not going to impact your performance as much as 2 or 3, 4 days in a row of decreased sleep. All right, so some notes I have here: sleep extension. So if you can get a little bit longer sleep, increase performance, better mood. Naps can improve performance, especially when coming off of a night of deprivation. Subjects showed learning improved learning skills when coming off of a nap. So naps, and it's a great way to supplement your sleep as well. If you, especially like if you only get 4 to 6 hours during the night, and then you have like a break in the afternoon or whatever, and you can kind of get like a half hour to an hour power nap in, take advantage of that, because that will actually help add to the total amount of sleep you're getting. It'll actually improve recovery and things like that. Practical applications. Room should be cool, dark, quiet. Create a routine. Stick to that routine. That's key. Being consistent with a bedtime routine is huge. Avoid watching TV in bed. That goes for really any device, laptop, tablets, phones. You really want to limit the light off of those before you go to sleep. I've seen things like up to 2 to 3 hours before, which I know probably isn't going to happen for most people. Although, and I was just thinking that, or not thinking, but I've seen where there's filters on screens now where it can actually make it so it's not as detrimental to you. Avoid caffeine 4 to 5 hours before bed. Careful of fluid consumption before sleep, just because you don't want to be getting up and go to the bathroom all the time. Don't nap less than an hour. Nap less than an hour, not too close to bedtime, like within a few hours of going to sleep. I remember my mom, I'm just laugh at that a little bit, because my mom was a nurse and she would come home, make dinner, all that stuff, and then she would actually fall asleep during the news at night, or the 11 o'clock news at night, and then get up and go to bed to get up at 4 in the morning. It was just, that was exactly her. Like, she napped for an hour too close to bedtime, and it probably actually made her sleep worse, and it probably made her feel worse long term. So I just thinking about that. But so those are key things right there. And like I said, if you can only get a certain amount of time in, make sure it's the best you can get. One thing too, magnesium supplements, which a lot of people are deficient in magnesium, which I'm not going to be a doctor and say you need to take this for deficiency. But guys, it helps with testosterone production, helps for everybody. It helps with the recovery. Deeper. This is not only the magnesium. Magnesium helps with the testosterone, but it puts you in a deeper sleep, which then in turn helps you recover. And all those things for guys will actually help you build testosterone, especially if you're training hard. Chances are, if you're an endurance runner and a male and you train pretty heavily, testosterone is lower than other people in the same age group. So you want to be careful of that. And but in general, magnesium will help you go to sleep. Like my wife just uses a magnesium spray. I actually take a magnesium pill, and just because for the testosterone, things like that. So, and that helps. I mean, it helps put you in a deeper sleep faster, and is not really any danger to it. So, something else to think about. This is through Sage Roundtree's Recovery and Athletes book. It's a VeloPress book. I have it on my website under books. You can purchase if you want to help support the website, anything like that. I get a little cut of it, but you can find it, obviously, Amazon and all that good stuff. So anyway, they suggest 8 hours of sleep a night should be your baseline, and I know some of you are already kind of laughing at that, thinking that that's not going to happen. But 10 hours of training a week, you're looking at 8 plus 1 extra hour. 15 hours of training, you're looking at 8 plus an hour and a half hour extra, and then 20 hours of training, 8 plus 2 hours extra. So you're looking at minimum 10 hours total, and that can be a combination of sleep and nap, which is nice. For most of you, I mean, I would say I train between 15 and 20 hours a week. So I would say most of you are probably in that 10 to 15 hour range. If you're following any of our schedules and doing any supplemental activity, you're probably right around that range. So, but if you're training hard, sleep is and that's your number one thing. Like if you're looking for something cheap that's going to work, that's going to give you the most bang for your buck, sleep is where it's at. There's just no doubt about it. Naps, you're looking at either 20 minutes or 90 plus minutes according to Sage. 20 minutes, you're looking at non-REM sleep stage where the eyes will still slow down and the brain waves slow, and those are the kind of the triggers to promote the recovery and adaptation, things like that. 90 plus, you're getting into that deep REM sleep, and this is when growth hormone is released. So, which is a good thing. I mean, that's what people will pay a lot of money to inject in their body. So you can get it for free by taking a nice deep REM sleep nap, which is better, right? All right, nutrition, general habits, just, biggest thing, I won't go into too much in the nutrition stuff because we talk about it in so many other places. But just looking at this, this is one thing I see, and I see this across the board, men and women who think they're getting enough calories, and they're just not. They wonder why they feel so run down, and we'll actually have them do Map My Fitness for a few days, look at their calories, and they're literally eating like 1,200 calories while training for a marathon, and it's like, whoa, oh my gosh, how are you even functioning? And they think they're eating enough, and unfortunately they're not even close. And I'll be honest with you, so with you guys, it's anything under 1,800 calorie diet really should be medically supervised. That's how low that number is. So if you're eating like 1,500, 1,200 calories a day, that's something that should be medically supervised. That's how low those numbers actually are. So most of you, that's not even covering your resting baseline. That's just not enough calories to really survive on. And ultimately you're not, because you come to us and you're like, oh, I feel so terrible. I'm losing my hair. My skin's gray. Well, that's no kidding, because you're not getting the nutrients, right? You're not getting enough in. And then you're trying to train on top of that. It's a miracle you don't just completely break down. And it's scary. And that's one thing that really just scares the heck out of me. So it is amazing how many people are scared of food, especially even when training. It's scary stuff. So I would, if you want, there's a calculator in Final Surge that we Tim put in for us. It's on our website. You can plug in your age, your weight, your gender, how much you ran for that day, and it'll spit out like how many calories you need just to cover what you've done for the day. And I think people look at that and they're like, wow, they're eating like a half to a third of that. And so to sustain yourself, sustain being able to train hard, calories is enough. So I'm not going to get into the carbohydrate, protein, fat stuff right now. I'm not going to talk about keto diets. I'm not going to talk about any of that other nonsense. Well, if you want that, those are in our nutrition lectures in Final Surge in the resources, blog posts, all that stuff. You can find that in another spot. Then fluids, just look at how much caffeinated fluid you're drinking through the course of the day. I'm definitely a big violator of that. I have a lot of coffee throughout the day. Still, if you do, you have to balance it out with more fluids. And that's the other thing too, especially right in the winter when I'm recording this, is you notice how little you drink in the winter. Got to make sure that regular fluid uptake is high. Electrolytes, big time, you guys. And the nice thing is, now like we use Isagenix, and we use the Hydrate, which is pretty low in carbohydrate when compared to like a Gatorade. It's a third of what the calories that are in that, but it also has a ton of electrolytes. So it's something you can put in your water and drink throughout the day. Obviously, there's things like Noon. There's so many different ones now. It's actually nice to see those things coming around. So you have those options now. One thing a physician told me is use the Celtic salt. You can get on Amazon, I believe. Really cheap, but it's basically a couple little scoops in your water, and it's everything. It's magnesium, it's phosphorus, it's sodium, potassium. It's all the main electrolytes you need. Doesn't add anything to your caloric intake, but it's going to be much better than just plain old water. And I notice that a lot too, like with heavy training, you're going to sweat a lot of those electrolytes out. That deals with muscle function, cardiac function. All those things are key. So you might want to think about going above and beyond just regular water. There's a shot of what the calculator looks like. On my website, it looks a little different on Final Surge, but it's the exact same math on there. All right, that's what it looks like. I plugged in myself, obviously a little longer ago, but you can see like 155 pounds, mid 30s, male, ran 10 miles. You can see their estimated RMR, non-activity calories plus running. And the non-activity, you have a little bit of leeway there because, like now I sit at a desk. I'm not as active as I was when I worked in the hospitals and I was on my feet for, 10, 12 hours straight. So it changes too, but you get the idea. The point is to see like how much you need for a day. And the beauty of this, how you can use it, is knowing what you need on a short or easy day versus what you need on a long run day or a workout day, because you're running more mileage on one day, you're going to need more calculators. And that's where when we talk about weight loss, that's where most people kind of mess it up, is they tend to basically eat the same amount of calories every day. And if you're really looking to know where you can scale back on, you can look at what you need for an easy day, eat to that what that day requires, and then on the next day eat what to that day requires, and it balances things out way, way better than just kind of averaging out over the course of the whole week. So something to consider too. All right, so some specific strategies. Two main things for muscle recovery immediately after workouts, and I'm talking really about protein, but also carbohydrate here too. Immediately before workout or after a workout, and then right before bed. Really, workouts are going to do three things for us, or to us, I should say. Dehydrate us, deplete glycogen, and break down muscle. It's how we recover from that, which is going to spur recovery and adaptation. So things that I do here, nightly protocol, protein shake. Actually, it's more of a meal replacement. I use an Isagenix. It's called Isoline Pro, but it's 36 grams of protein, whey protein, whatever. It's never brought to a boiling point. It's always below a boiling point. Whey protein. It's got the carbohydrate. It's basically a meal replacement. It's about 400 calories. I'll do that at night. Sometimes people will just do like a glass of milk with a bit of protein in a protein shake, and that will be fine too. But if you struggle with getting enough calories in through the day, I would say go above and beyond for almost like the meal replacement. And my wife started doing this as well. And she's actually noticing how much better her sleep is and how much better she feels in the morning. And I would say this too, if you're a person who runs in the morning and they don't eat anything in the morning, you can do this at night. You're still going to go, 6 to 10 hours, maybe a little bit longer before you run. And then but you're going to have a little bit, you're going to feel better. And it actually will help with energy expenditure, especially if you're trying to lose weight. That will actually help you a little bit in that category too, because you're not just breaking down muscle, you're actually promoting the burning of fat and building the muscle, which is going to improve your resting metabolism, your overall metabolism, things like that. So anyway, I'm going off on tangent. I shouldn't, but that's what I do before bed, and I also take my magnesium supplement, like I told you. So that's what I've done. I've noticed increases in my testosterone. I've noticed increases in just my just general feeling of well-being. Training is feeling better, on and on and on. So it's obviously not a short-term fix. It's something you have to be in for the long haul. All right, guideline for quick recovery. Going back to our people at mysportscience.com. Have carbohydrate, 1.2 grams carbohydrate as soon as possible after exercise. And I would say this is more important for an SOS day than it is a regular easy run day. So that's what I would take into account on all this. So 1 kilogram is worth 2.2. So let's just take a 150-pound person, divide by 2.2 to get the kilograms, 68 kilograms, multiply that by 1.2. You're looking at about 82 grams of carbohydrate as soon as you can after exercise. So think about like what a gel is. Maybe that's as little as you need versus, like maybe gel and banana or some kind of fruit. I actually go back to that Isoline Pro. I always take that. I always take those just because of my travel situation to workouts and things like that. So I need something easily accessible that I can take right away, that's easily transportable. So Isagenix makes the Isoline Pro in the protein, but also makes protein bars, things like that. And so anything like that. I mean, there's lots of options out there, but 82 grams isn't a crazy amount. So if you're taking in fluid and some kind of carbohydrate as food, you're going to be close to where you need to be on something like that. Avoid excessive dehydration. Rehydrate with 150% of weight loss. So another thing I do is I always go to Lifetime, take a shower before I go to work. I weigh myself after there. I kind of have an idea how much I probably lost, and then you can start the rehydration process right away. So, so if you lost 2 pounds, you want to put back 3 pounds worth of fluids. You can experiment with antioxidants, things like, well, vitamin C obviously is the big one. So antioxidants, tart cherry juice, or protein. This is more long-term than short-term though, and that's the key for that one. So it's kind of a, yeah, it might be not noticeable early on, but long-term, it's kind of like glucosamine and chondroitin. You may not really notice it, but as soon as you stop taking it after a few months, you notice how bad you hurt, right? So it's one of those things. With protein basically does this right after exercise. It stops the breakdown of protein. So when you work out, protein's being broken down from actual damage, or maybe it's being used a little bit as a fuel, something like that. But something is happening where protein is being broken down. And so if you take protein right away after a workout, it stops that breakdown and starts the process of protein synthesis. The thing here is protein synthesis does not equal muscle building. All it means is that now protein is being synthesized within the body, and then that can then go into muscle protein building, whatever fuel source, whatever the case is. So that's the key. So like you'll see a lot of times, you'll see protein synthesis synonymous with muscle building, and it's not necessarily the same thing. That the muscle building will occur, but it's just going to be further down the road. And that's one thing to keep in mind on this. All right, so we talked about that. I'm not going to get too much more into this. We've talked about that, talked about the electrolytes. I think that's key. I think being this aggressive is when a lot of fluid is lost during a workout, which even right now, so this could be summer or winter, because in winter you have to remember you're wearing a heck of a lot of extra clothes a lot of times, and your sweat rate is going to be pretty high. So after an easy run, it might not be that necessary. After a workout where you run hard plus been wearing several layers of clothes, it's going to be more important. And the sodium for retention of the fluid, you just don't want to pee it all out. Space it out too. So I'm really like 8 ounces every 15, 20 minutes. You don't guzzle a ton of stuff right away, because what's going to happen, it's going to overload the stomach. You're just going to pee it out. So taking like 8 ounces every 20 minutes, and maybe every half hour, just like have a timer set for every half hour, and you drink 6 to 8 ounces. You're going to retain, and you put electrolytes in there, you're going to retain that fluid, and it's actually going to go to where you need it to be and not just out through urine. So something to keep in mind there. Glycogen, we talked about that. So you're looking at 1.2 grams per kilogram right away, and then every hour after that for 3 to 4 hours. And that's, again, those are big workout days. Easy runs, not as important to do it. You still don't want to deprive yourself of glycogen or carbohydrate, but it's not as key that you be on this strict of a schedule. It's really just workout days, and this is what's going to happen this is what people get in trouble later into a segment when they're not recovering. They're feeling like crap all the time. A lot of times it's something like this. Make sure you're on this. And I know you're busy. I know you're going straight from there to work a lot of times, or you're going straight from work to a workout. But make sure if you plan it, I know it's tough to plan every single day. Make sure you plan out your workout days. Be on top of that. It's where you got to be diligent and really focus on the details on those things. So if you're replacing immediately and adequately for the first 2 hours, basically what's going to happen is that glycogen is going to be stored in the liver, because the liver is what supplies the brain and the central nervous system. And the brain and the central nervous system really, really function much better off of carbohydrate, right? They don't like protein. They're not going to use fat. And so, kind of going off here, when people talk about going ketogenic and all this other business, your brain and your central nervous system like glycogen. don't take that away from them. That's why I just don't understand it at all. There's a time and a place for everything, but if you're an endurance runner, it's really not that time. And that's all I'll say about that. But okay, so first 2 hours, glycogen going stored in the liver. The faster you, here's the key, the faster you replace this, then once that's full, so the brain goes, okay, liver's full. Now, whatever we're taking in is going to go to your muscles. It's going to go to your calf muscles. It's going to go to your quads. It's going to go to your butt. It's going to go to your hamstrings. It's going to go to all those places that we're just cranking out the glycogen to supply your energy for exercise. So the faster you replace the glycogen, the faster those muscles get filled back up. And what that means is the faster you recover from. So something that might have usually taken you 3 or 4 days to recover from without doing this might now get you into that window of every 24 to 48 hours. And that's what's really key here. Can take 24 hours or more for a hard work of or modest carbohydrate. Sorry, that's terrible. Can take 24 hours or more after a hard workout, or if modest carbohydrate is ingested. So high carbohydrate days are the key here on workout days. Replace what you burnt, because even on a speed day, your intensity is so high that you're just burning through that carbohydrate. And so people will talk about being fat adapted and things like that. Yes, that's true, but the point is you have very limited store of glycogen. And so no matter how adapted you are to burning fat, you're going to blow through that carbohydrate. You're going to blow through that glycogen. You're going to blow through the blood glucose. So I don't care how well adapted you are. I don't care what you do as far as diet. You're going to need carbohydrate. That's just basic physiology. So I always wonder what people get so hung up on that. Is like the whole term of glycolysis, which is what provides you aerobic energy, relies on carbohydrate. So don't think that you need to make carbohydrate or you need to make glycogen out of protein. Just eat the carbohydrate. Just if you want to cut back on something, cut back on Mountain Dew and Coke and processed crap. That's what you need to cut out now. Don't cut out, whole grain pastas and fruits and vegetables. Those things are carbohydrates too, but they're what you need to provide yourself with fuel. And I don't understand why people are so hell-bent on not putting those in your diet. It just blows my mind. But anyway, all right. I'm not lecturing. I'm just frustrated. All right, people. So give me a break. No, I'm just kidding. So eat your cookies. So soreness, things like megadoses of Anidox, tart cherry juice, those things like that, they will work. Short term will make you feel better. The thing you have to really remember here is, and I've changed my tone a little bit since this is what I did for camp last year, so I've kind of changed a little bit, but I still think use sparingly, because if you do these things in big doses every day, what's going to happen is you're going to kind of block that feeling of soreness. And it's that soreness that triggers the adaptation to recover from that soreness, which in turn allows for adaptation to go through exercise, right? So your body basically gets put in a tough spot. Your body says, whoa, I don't like this. So it triggers responses to recover from that. And then it says, well, we'll make these muscles a little more resilient so that next time we do this, we don't feel as bad. And that's the whole thing of adaptation and recovery. And so if we immediately take these big doses of antioxidants and things like that, we lower that level of actual soreness in the muscle. So the body doesn't react as severe because it doesn't think it exercised as hard as it did. And so over long term, you kind of blunt that adaptation phase, response and recovery response, because in the body's mind, it didn't work as hard as you really did work it. It's because you loaded it up with these things that kind of blunt that response. So you want to be careful with that. Now, what I will say is most of you are training well above and beyond what you're used to. And so you want, use after a hard workout, use after a race, things like that. That might be the best time to use these things. But to take, 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day, you might not need it. That's if you really think you need it, get a blood test and see what vitamins and minerals you're actually deficient in, and then go from there. But you just want to be careful. You want to be careful. Again, it goes to that balance of recovering too much versus promoting the maximum amount of adaptation that you possibly can. All right, protein, talked about this a lot. So protein is we're not really looking short term here, we're looking more long term. So don't abandon your post-workout routine, which I don't think people are going to do anyway. This is actually changed a little bit too. I say 20 grams of high quality here, but actually 20 to 40 grams is really the window you're looking at. That's really, I think the ratio, if I recall right, is like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram. So we can figure that out real quick again. So let's just say we use our 150-pound person again, divided by 2.2 gives us 68 kilograms. Let's do 1.6. So you're looking at 110 grams of protein to, we'll say 68.18 times 2.2. So for a 150-pound person, you're looking at, about 110 to 150 grams of protein that a person's really looking at getting into. But so if you spread that out, I mean, that's actually probably more. That's more than 20 grams. Ideally, you're looking at protein pacing. So you're looking at protein in the morning, protein in lunch, protein at dinner, and then protein at bedtime. And so if you spread that out, let's just average it out, say 125 divided by 4 meals, you're looking at about 30, a little over 30 grams of protein per meal or snack or whatever. And so that's going to be, so 20 grams might not be enough to do it. Depending on the situation, it might be 20 grams there, and then you're going to go have another 20 grams at breakfast, whatever. That's fine. But what I've seen some studies too, where it looked at a lot of athletes, and we really don't practice what we preach. I mean, most Americans eat the vast majority of their protein at dinner time. So out of that, use that 125 grams of protein, they might be getting like 75 grams of that at one meal. And that's too much protein for the body to absorb. So again, you're just going to pee a lot of that out. But if you spread that out over the course of the day, 4 or 5 times a day, 20, 30 grams, all that's going to be absorbed. It's going to go much better into muscle protein synthesis. It's going to go better into repairing the muscle damage, all that good stuff. So that's the key there. So again, just focusing on again tonight, the study I looked at said 28 grams of casein protein, which would be milk based, and 15 grams of carbs before bed. And that's been shown to increase the synthesis, as well improve strength and size of muscle. And we're not talking about bodybuilders here, people. We're talking about just improving the health of the muscle fiber, improving the resiliency, improving the overall strength of it. Size, I mean, I always go back to my brother-in-law is a bodybuilder, and he trains as hard at bodybuilding as we are training at running, right? And probably harder. And it's taken him 30 years to have the physique he does. So you taking protein at night isn't going to make you look like him, right? It's not going to happen. So don't worry about being Hulkamania here. You're talking very minuscule amounts of measurement there. So don't get hung up on that. It's actually a good thing. And so even if you're thinking about weight loss, I always try to get people to think more in terms of body composition change. And if you can improve the content of your muscle, that's automatically going to probably make your fat content less, and it's going to make you just overall more healthy than just trying to lose a bunch of weight. Because when people try to lose weight, they usually just end up losing muscle mass along with muscle mass and water weight too, which isn't necessarily a good thing. So this is actually a better way to approach it. Stretching flexibility. So post-stretching has actually been found to decrease blood flow and capillary oxygenation. This is detrimental when we're trying to deliver oxygen and take waste product away, so we don't want to necessarily do that. And it's been shown that it has no impact on muscle soreness or delayed onset of muscle soreness. So to do stretching right after your run, take it or leave it. Where it is beneficial, maybe that 4 hours later, or if you're running in the morning, do your stretching at nighttime, something like that. So my basic guideline, very light stretch post-workout, saves any serious stretching for several hours. We're talking 4+ hours later. AM workout, focus on recovery, flexibility stretching at night. You're gonna be much better off. You don't necessarily need to spend 20 minutes after a run doing heavy stretching. You're better off focusing that time on the actual recovery through nutrition and hydration, things like that. Cold immersions, ice baths. It's interesting because a lot of you are reading this down. I posted that study last week about how like cryotherapy was actually worse than like taking like a hot bath or going into a hot tub, something like that. There are some benefits to it. I view it in the same lines of antioxidants. I remember in college, like just sitting in the ice tub every day, and that was too much, way too much. So again, short term will help you recover. Long term or used excessively, you can blunt adaptations to your training. You're looking at something like 10 to 15 minutes after a 2-hour long run or a 90-minute intense workout. So you're thinking like long tempo runs, big strength workouts here. 50 to 55 degrees seems normal, which is different than the cryo, because you know the cryo gets very cold. You're talking negative 100 to 200 degrees. Within first 15 minutes is ideal, but within the first hour of a run is all right. So you're looking at, maybe not as cold as we're used to making the water, or jumping into a cryotherapy chamber, something like that. And it's really something only after a hard workout or a big long run. Compression gear, and actually compression tights, true compression tights, can actually be a replacement for doing a cold bath right away. So if you're going right to work and you want to invest in something, maybe invest in a good pair of compression tights that you can wear underneath your work clothes, and then go just take them off after a little bit. So recovery seems to be more anecdotal than anything, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you feel better, who cares, right? And both wearing during exercise and recovery. So I've seen even less during exercise than the recovery aspect of it. So like from a performance standpoint, I haven't seen anything that's been really clear cut on improving performance. If you do wear socks, don't wear the sleeves, because the sleeves can actually push blood flow back into like behind the Achilles, can actually cause harm. And then be careful. Some companies make a sock for racing and another for actual recovery. It has to deal with the amount of pressure on there. So that's, again, a good time to go into an actual running store and talk to somebody, because there's going to be a difference there. You don't want to just order one thing in expecting it to be recovery, and it's not enough pressure on it to actually be recovery. Tights, same type of thing. It has been recommended to sleep in them. I just don't know how comfortable that would be. They're going to be a lot more expensive. So I know in the running store, a lot of people come in and they just want to buy like a pair of running tights and think that that's going to be enough for the recovery. It's not. It's got to be true compression recovery tights, and those babies are expensive. You're looking at $150 plus for those. And so, well, you have to look at it this way. If I'm going to spend money, are you going to spend $1,500 on Normatec boots, or are you going to get $150 on tights? So whatever fits your budget, I guess. But to me, that's pretty pricey for they may or may not work. General recommendations: wear for a few hours post-workout, especially if you can't get off your feet. So if you're going from like, a 10-mile tempo run, and then you're going into your office or you're going into wherever, and you're working for another 8 to 10 to 12 hours, that can be a nice replacement for you if you can't go home, get off your feet, and relax for a little bit. Twice as long as the length of the workout you're recovering from. So if your workout lasted an hour and a half, wear them for 3 hours. Traveling, huge. Like I love them for travel. That's backed up a little bit by science. So if you're on a flight, wear them for your flight. Take them off when you get back, or off the travel. So some key components there. Massage. I love massage. I get a massage about every 2 weeks. Mechanism isn't quite known, but probably due to tension release in the muscle and managing inflammation due to the micro tears that we actually breaking down from workouts. Can also help break down scar tissue and muscle adhesions, and I am a big believer in that. My Achilles and calves have been so jacked up from the last 20 years. I'm seeing a great massage therapist now, and she's already done wonders on my back, and now she's kind of moved her attention to my calves and my Achilles, and it's been great. I mean, I'm like a lot of you guys, like as soon as I put racing flats and or spikes or something like that, I'm like, do any type of speed work, like the first thing to start going is my Achilles and calves, and it's helped so much. But short term, you're not going to be quite as beneficial. Might feel sore for 2 to 3 days. So given that, you're going to want to schedule accordingly. You might want to do like after a workout, the day after a workout, where you have a couple days to bounce back from that. Shorter recovery time if you do them regularly. Like, so now I've been doing regularly for about 2 years now, and I'm fine the next day. You just have to focus on hydration and things like that, flush all that junk out. One time a week to once a month. I go every 2 weeks. I feel like that's right where that's kind of my sweet spot. Obviously, your budget will probably dictate as well. A lot of this you can do on yourself too. So last deep, slow massage 3 weeks out from a race. Do a lighter touch-up about 3 days or before and after a race, and that'll help with recovery. So a lot of times you don't want to, and a lot of times people want a massage, or like a spouse will get them a massage and they'll get it for like the week before the race. You're like, no, don't do it, just save it, you know. So if you do it, make sure it's a couple weeks out, and longer if you don't do massage regularly, you want to be at least that 3 weeks out from your race. Periodizing recovery early on. Hopefully training isn't that hard, so focus on the day-to-day, the rehydration, refueling, and rest. Those are the 3 things you really need to focus the biggest on. If you feel like you're getting close to the edge, start pulling out all the stops. We want to adapt, but we also don't want to go over that edge, and that's when you start throwing in the things like foam rolling and a massage, and maybe doing ice baths or whatever the case is. You know, you start doing a little above and beyond what you were doing already. And then taper. Training adaptations are already there, so we just want to feel good. So whatever you need to do to make yourself feel good. If you want to load up on the antioxidants every single day and just kind of get all that crap out of you, I personally have no problem with that. You want to make yourself feel as good as possible. So there you have it. You notice I didn't spend a lot of time on the real expensive stuff. Like I mentioned Normatec boots, but I didn't really go into Normatec boots. I mean, that's something it's great. It's a great luxury if you can afford it. A lot of places are renting them out now. You just go sit and chill. But I'm a huge believer. Get those 3 R's down first and be really good at those. And I think a lot of you will notice how much better you feel over time. And then once you start getting into other things, then I think it's more about things like massage and foam rolling and just doing the flexibility stretching at night and making sure that you take care of those details first. And then you can really start thinking about going into cryotherapy, which we know is maybe not necessarily the best thing, or whatever the case is, then going above and beyond what you've done before. So the basics first, and I want to make sure we all get the basics down first, because that's where we're going to get the most practical, and that's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. So that's really why I wanted to focus more on those and just hit on the other stuff a little bit. So, all right, and now we're getting into a point, especially at the time of recording this, it's we're less than 10 weeks away from Boston. This is where you're going to start really starting to feel the training hit you. So really start making sure you're focusing on the recovery part of these things. So with that, hopefully you got a little bit out of this today, and I will talk to you later. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.